the world's greatest radio.
We give you a reason to stay.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning and welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are in touch with the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. And this is radio the way it should be heard. For those who do not know, Mr. Fuller is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. It is a compensatory counter-racist code. And you can get the revised expanded edition by Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. by going to producejustice.com, and on the screen will come up all the information that you need to get the book. I will have him address that later on in the hour. And don't forget, do not call until I give you the signal. We're going to give Mr. Fuller a chance to speak. To say what's on his mind, and then we will entertain your calls. And also, I have loads of Gmail, and I'll give you that address also. So, without further ado, tell your friends that we are now on from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. on Wednesdays. And it's live. We also have podcasts available so that you can hear. And we do have that streaming problem all fixed up as far as I know. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce to some and present to others Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Good. Mr. Fuller, what would you like to start today's program out with, something that is on your mind or something you want to address?
Well, I'll just mention something that somebody sent me an email about. They had a question about it. The question was, why is sin limited to hypocrisy from your perspective, meaning from my perspective? And then asked me to please elaborate. In the word guide, I had sin listed as just a single word, hypocrisy. And my reason for doing that in a compensatory fashion under religion or even under political philosophy is that in the system of white supremacy, that is the problem that causes most of the other problems. People pretending to be one thing when they're something else. And all pretense should be done away with if you're going to solve the problem of racism. People say that they believe in justice, they believe in this, they believe in that, they believe in the other, and that they don't believe in a whole list of things, and at the same time they act differently. The chief weapon of a racist is deception. So deception automatically calls for being hypocritical, showing a false face, saying one thing and doing another, believing in one thing and then doing something contrary to what you say that you believe in, or rather pretending to believe in one thing. So that's what is called hypocrisy by most dictionary definitions. So therefore, I say that, therefore, I center on the word hypocrisy as being sin and sin as being hypocrisy. Because you can solve other problems once you start getting rid of the hypocrisy. Everything else starts falling in line, because the antidote to hypocrisy, which is nothing but deception, is truth. In revelation of truth, everybody's showing themselves to be exactly the way that they are, If a white person believes something, they should be able to say it. Say what you believe. Say it openly. You'll get a lot of opposition and all like that, but you still say it. You should say it, and that will clear the air. It might hurt a lot of people's feelings. I mean, if everybody just starts saying what they really believe, just be outward with it. Everybody, white and non-white. Just say what you really believe. Don't pretend anything. Whatever's really on your mind, you should be able to say it in a civil, without shouting or name calling or getting into screaming matches and all like that. And just say what you really believe and why you believe it. And don't show a false face. We're all taught under the system of white supremacy all day long to walk around showing a false face, saying things that we really don't mean. We're taught that. The system of white supremacy does that. So that, by definition, is sin. And the reason I say that that's sin is because if you get everybody to stop showing that false face, everybody to say what they really believe about everything in every area of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, then we can at least have a decent conversation that will lead to solutions to all of the world's problems. Mm-hmm. That's the hypothesis.
Okay. How does sin, as you put it, what would be the compensatory counter-racist definition of that, and then how does it work?
You mean the word sin?
Yes, sir.
Oh, well, what I put in the word guide, that's on page 364.
Of the revised...
of the revised...
Okay.
No, of the word guide.
Of the word guide, I'm sorry.
Yeah, of the word guide itself in the book. And it says on page 364, use this term to apply as follows, the word sin, and that is hypocrisy, willfully and deliberately pretending to others that one has a constructive belief and intent that one does not have. And number two is pretending to believe one thing while in truth believing another, or pretending to say or do one thing while in truth saying or doing something very different and or contradictory.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes that's by compensatory definition a sin.
Okay.
And that makes a person a sinner automatically. When you show a false face about doing anything, when you say anything that you really don't mean, and you know that you don't mean it.
Okay.
That's sinning. That's causing all kinds of confusion.
Yes.
And from that confusion will come all types of incorrect behavior. That's the theory.
Yes, sir.
And that should be the evidence, too.
Okay, now, underneath that, you have single, and then you said use this word with caution. Could you read that section there? Because I now have it open on page 364 of the word guide.
The word single?
You said use this, under single, beside you said use this word with caution. And could you read that little paragraph there, just a few there, where it says try to use this word?
Okay, the word single.
Yes.
Single.
Yes, sir.
Use this word with caution. Try to use this word in ways that will best produce the revelation of truth, that which is, study the ways that others use this word, and then study the ways that people sometimes use the words apart, couples, separate, triple, together, and are allied. Study how they apply these words to describe interactions between people. Ask questions of yourself and of others. For instance, question.
Mm-hmm.
Is any person, place, creature, or thing truly single? Then another question. What exactly is a couple? Can three people holding each other's hands be a couple? Can two people who are not touching each other, but who are looking at each other and smiling, be single? Are they a couple? Are they a couple that are single? Are all people, creatures, and things in the universe interrelated? How single is single? How double is double? Can a person be single and united at the same time? Now, that last question is very important. I mean, when you say that a person is single, I'm single, okay? That's what the person might say.
Yes.
Can a person be single and united at the same time? See, what do you mean by single? What do you mean by united? When is a person united? See, and the word single can lead to questions about the word single, can lead to the question about what is a united person? What is a united state? Because if you start talking about a state, then you get into a question about what is a state.
Yes.
See what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So these are thought questions and answers.
Yes, sir.
Like everything in the Counter Racist Word Guide.
Yes,
There are
sir.
things to think about because language is very tricky, particularly in the English language.
Yes. To the listeners, you just heard excerpts from the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, the Counter Racist Codified Word Guide. I talk about this every week, but this is what and why you need to get the book so you can read along with Mr. Fuller to understand definitively what he is speaking about, and I have both copies in front of me. Mr. Fuller, before we open up the phone lines, can you just speak a little bit to the book, the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code, and also the Word Guide? Could you speak about that, where they can get it, the information overseas and so forth, so that we may understand what's happening?
Well, you still can't get it overseas. I'm still trying to work out something where that can be done. But it is extremely difficult, these overseas shipments. And I'm trying to get all of the information I possibly can from whomever there is anywhere on the planet that can give some constructive information, procedures about how to get shipments overseas in the best possible manner. And some people have submitted some information that I'm looking into, but I am soliciting, actually, any information that I can get to pass on to people who are saying that they themselves are looking for information and haven't been able to find avenues or venues for doing that. That would be cost effective. Now, we can do it, but a question is raised as to how much would a person be willing to pay for a book? I mean, that's got to be shipped somewhere to some obscure place overseas. And, it just wouldn't be cost effective. It would be in the exploitative vein at a certain point.
Yes, sir.
But we're seeking information on that.
Yes, sir.
But the books themselves, within what we call the Northwestern Hemisphere, the United States of America, you can get it by going to producejustice.com. That's it. That's producejustice.com, and then what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the basic textbook and the Compensatory Counter-Racist Word Guide, which is basically an addition to the basic textbook.
Yes, sir.
I couldn't get it all in one volume. I wanted to do that, but then the book would be too thick to carry around.
Oh, yes.
So I had to put it in a separate volume, the Word Guide portion.
Okay. All righty. With that being said, let's do this. Talktainment Radio is a 24/7, no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility that have hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, health, wellness, and, of course, religion and politics. Now, here's one that I'd like to share with you, and it is simply called This is Libby. Libby is all about empowering women through health, wellness, and a positive mindset. This is Libby deals with the social, culture, politics, and economics of the healthcare and wellness industry. Come get liberated with an expert in the field of health and wellness. Miss Libby Rand broadcasts Mondays exclusively here on TalkTeamItRadio.com, and that is radio the way it should be heard. Phone lines are now going to be open, and you may call at 1-877-932-9766, and make sure that you direct your questions to Mr. Fuller in a short and concise way that he may be able to address your questions. You can also Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and I will try to read your question on the air, but I have to admit that I am loaded with questions today, so I probably will not read your question today, but it will go into what we call the question rotation, and we'll have Mr. Fuller address that. We have, and going to that, let's see, from Javari. He says, Mr. Fuller, I've heard that the legal definition of emancipation is a transfer of property, not actual liberation or independence. That would mean that all descendants of African slaves are still chattel property of the U.S. government, since Lincoln's emancipation transferred them from private Southern hands to the federal government. If this legalese is actually true on paper, then that explains why whites can murder us whenever they feel like it, because we are technically just property under racism, white supremacy. We already know that whites treat their dogs better than they do blacks. Of course, immoral legalese only matters when whites have the force to back it up, especially once people realize that they have been tricked. Could you address that? Still learning, Javari from Tampa, Florida.
Well, I don't have the word emancipation listed in the word guide. I haven't even examined that word, but or looked at it even in the dictionary. So many words that I've never even considered, but I could consider that, and anybody who does consider that should examine it. The compensatory counter-racist word guide that I have put out has just been a basic guide, and so everyone has a duty or the privilege, whichever way you want to look at it, of looking up any word and examine that word and take the word apart, you might say. Break it down. Ask people questions about the word, unlimited questions. And always the procedure is whomever uses the word should be able to explain the meaning of the word in detail. And so that would be the procedure under compensatory logic to follow. So the person who is asking this question, the next time they hear someone use this word, or if a person writes the word in a book or in a paper or something like that, then they can address that person. The person who uses the word should be able to explain what he or she means by the use of the word. However, speaking broadly, under the system of white supremacy, I have already taken the position that the only real government on the planet is the system of white supremacy. So what is the system of white supremacy for? It's for the domination and mistreatment of people of color. So therefore, if you use the word emancipation saying that people are free from being mistreated because of color, that is not so. That has never happened. Racism exists. You either have white supremacy or you don't. Now, I say that you do have it. There are some people who say there's no such thing as that. No such thing as white supremacy. That racism doesn't exist. That's just something that words that people kick around. But it really doesn't exist. and certainly doesn't exist in the form of something called white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, people can say that, but I have already concluded, and that's what my book is about, both the basic book and the word guide, that white supremacy is the major government on this planet. There's no other so-called government more powerful than the government of white supremacy.
Mm.
And that government is not about emancipating, if you say being free from mistreatment. It's all about mistreatment of anybody and everybody who has color in his or her skin by people who have decided that that's the type of government that they want.
Yes, sir. Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your question?
Hi, good morning to you both. Mr. Fuller, question for you. I've read both your books, and reading your third one, I think I have a pretty good understanding of the concept, but wanted to get your opinion on something, and this is a real scenario. A white woman walks up to you, out of just a random person, walks up to you, white, female, and offers you an apology for racism. What would be your codified reaction or response to that?
Oh, you would accept the apology, but then you would say, now, what are you doing? You can ask questions if you wish to, because she volunteered to come up and announce this. So an apology doesn't really mean anything when something is really going on and still is going on. So, but you can accept it. You can say, well, I accept your apology if that's what you want to do. But then if you want to have an extended conversation about it, you can just simply say, now that you have apologized, what are you doing to rid the world of this system, because it's still in place? It's not like you apologize for something that happened and then stopped happening. It's still here. So what are you doing, just for your information, that would be all that you would be interested in, coming from a white person. What are you doing to see to it that this system is no longer in place? And then let her talk. What have you done lately? Because the system is still in place. So that's just like you being a prisoner of war and the warden of the prison come in there, or some other spokesperson come into your cell and say, I apologize for you being wrongly convicted and being in here. But you're still in there. That's all that is. They're apologizing for you being still in the shape that you're in. So what is the apology really worth when you're still there? The bars are still there. The cell is still there. And you're in the cell behind the bars. But you got an apology.
Yeah. Wow. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call to get in contact with the show. This is the Compensatory Concept, heard exclusively on Talktainment Radio with Mr. Neely Fuller and co-host Mr. Bobby. You can also Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and we will try to address your questions. Let's see. We have another question from Daryl. He says, Mr. Fuller, how does a non-white person determine if a person is white? For example, if I meet a woman who says she's Hispanic or Native American, but if I randomly saw her on the street, I would classify her as white based off of her appearance. Would it be inappropriate to have sexual relationship with her?
Well, you have to find out if the person is really classified as white or non-white, and then go from there. And that's the question that you would ask. Not, are you Hispanic? Hispanic is not a color. You have white people, non-white people, and white supremacists when you start talking about colors. And anybody who is in the non-white category would be black, brown, so-called red, yellow, beige, tan, anybody who is classified by color, not by some language or some historical context or some cultural context that does not directly address what color the person is. Racism is about color. It's not about language. It's not about historical context. I mean, where your grandfather came from, or what geographical area, I mean, they may have been identified with. It's all about color. That's what racism is, strictly about color. What color are you? What color is your classification? Now, it is true that many black people who are classified as black, who have very, very light skin and look like they're white, but they're classified as black. It goes to show you all the confusion that the white supremacists have spread to their advantage.
Yes. About
the racial classifications. So you ask the person who is classified as Hispanic, if they introduce themselves as Hispanic, say, yes, but what is your color classification? You told me what your historical, or language classification is, Hispanic, but that's not a color. What is your color classification, ma'am?
Okay. All righty. Let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1. What is your question for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.?
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. How you doing today? I had a couple of questions, Mr. Fuller. That was okay, Mr. Bobby. My first question is about poor whites and the role they play in the system of white supremacy. Here in the city I stay in, it seems to be at least 15% of poor whites in the city part where non-whites stay. But they seem not to be too concerned what's going on, or no interest in, what's going on. They don't really, they just complicit in what's going on in the system. And I was curious to ask Mr. Fuller, what role do they play in the system of white supremacy as poor white? That's my first question, if I could get
Mr. Fuller?
If I understand the question, that wouldn't register within determining whether or not a person is a white supremacist, because the definition for poor whites is very vague. What is a poor white person in a system of white supremacy? What does it mean? They have $10 rather than $5? I mean, or $10,000 rather than $5,000? And what does that have to do with how they treat people based on color? So that doesn't even register. The question is, are you a white supremacist or not? Regardless of what people call you poor or rich or well-educated or sophisticated or whatever other terms you may have. It doesn't matter if you believe in white supremacy. Just because you don't have any money doesn't say that you may or may not believe in white supremacy and practice it as best you can. So that's what you determine about the person. So what the compensatory counter-racist logic requires me to do is that any white person who is able to be a white supremacist in a system of white supremacy should be suspected of being one until proven by his or her actions in all areas of activity all the time that he or she is not a white supremacist. And the proof must be to me. That's the criteria. I'm not supposed to ever take somebody else's word for a person being not being a white supremacist.
I'm gonna have to hold it right there. Hang on, caller. We have to take this break. TalkTimidRadio.com. We go where you go. Check us out. All righty, TalkTimidRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We started off the show talking about sin and hypocrisy, but you can go off topic and discuss anything that you would like with Mr. Fuller, and you can do that by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Okay, we still have caller on line number 1. Go ahead with your second question, caller.
Yes, my last question for Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, I wanted to know, why do white people choose to interact with black people? Because I feel like, throughout history, we've been told that we're not really capable of being, superior to them. We throw away people, we no good, we just tear things up, we just no good for society, but still, they choose to come and, interact with us, sleep with us, do things that, to me, don't make sense with us, but they say with these type of people that don't need to be, around at all, but they still find some way, some time to confine non-white people to engage with some type of behavior that, to me, don't make sense. That was my question. Why they choose to interact with us when they say we these bad people?
Well, it could be, if I understand your question, it could be what I started off this program with, and that is that word hypocrisy. That's a sin, the sin. The only definition that makes sense for sin nowadays, here in 2016, since sin is all over the place now. A lot of things that used to be called a sin, are considered that you parade up and down the street now and praise things that you used to call sin. So, but what I have written is that sin is hypocrisy, showing a false face, because from that, if you're false to people, if people walk around, pretending to be one thing that they are not, or something that they are not, and being able to deceive people to their detriment in that manner, then all types of evil flow from that. People not being able to say exactly what is on their minds, or refusing to say what is exactly on their minds, and interact with people about what they really and truly like, what they really and truly do not like. But the white supremacists, and if I think the essence of your question is, why do they do contradictory things? Well, hypocrisy goes with that. They say one thing and do another all the time. Deception is the main weapon of white supremacists. Deceiving people to their detriment. You can't control people for very long if you're not deceiving them.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be truthful with people and then continue to mistreat them. It just doesn't work. If you're going to mistreat people on a long-term basis, it's best to do it through the agency or the procedure of deception, being false, smiling when you're really frowning inside, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Et cetera, yes, sir.
Right.
Okay. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. And before I read the next Gmail, let me say this. I mean no disrespect to Mr. Fuller when I have to cut him off. I don't mean to cut him off. It's just that we are obligated to do our commercials. So in case some of you get offended, I'm saying I'm not doing that on purpose. I'm trying to get better at that, but there are certain things and signals that I have to adhere to. So now you know. And I'm trying to be better on the Gmails. I can only read them as you write them. I do go over them, but sometimes it is difficult. But anyway, going to a Gmail. Mr. Fuller, Mr. Smothers wrote this. He says, one of my black coworkers decided to send the CEO a letter asking him to help us to do the right thing. Now, at work, there's talk about what's wrong. I choose to use the term white supremacy racism, but he, the non-white male, one of the managers, a white woman, suggested we use the term fear. I am the only non-white person who is taking counter-racist suggestions and attempting to use them. Would it be correct to sugarcoat my speech in order to get white coworkers comfortable about talking about racism? By that, I mean not using the term racism, white supremacy. Thank you.
In order to keep people from running away when you're trying to talk to them, it's best to use language that they are willing to listen to, as long as you are being truthful and getting the result that you should be getting. The objective for getting rid of racism is to do what? Is to replace it with a product called justice. So I've always told people, like I used to do myself, I stayed away from the subject of racism unless a person says they really want to talk about racism. But when a person indicates that they didn't want to talk about racism in a job situation, I would always honor that they are indicating that they rather not talk about racism.
Yes, sir.
So then I would ask the logical question, well, what do you want to talk about?
Yes, sir.
And then usually the person, after they would sort of wander around and with different words and whatnot, I would ask the person, well, are you willing to talk about the production of justice? Are you willing to talk about the production of justice? And then I would define what I meant by justice, the compensatory definition.
Okay.
Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help.
Yes,
Are
sir.
you willing to talk about justice within that context? And if the person says yes, then you go with that.
Okay.
Say, now, this discussion is going to be about 2 points, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. No person in this facility. That's point one. Point two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most, always, without fail, gets the most constructive help.
Okay.
Now, are you willing to talk about justice and producing it here in this facility with that particular definition in mind?
Okay.
And if they say yes, then you go for it. Everything else should work out just fine once you get on that wavelength.
Okay.
Because everybody's in agreement that that should be the objective.
Okay. Before we move to the next call, based on what you just said, is that sugarcoating?
No.
Okay.
No, because your objective for every move that you make in interaction between people is to get that balance between people.
Okay.
And the only way you can get that is through the process of justice.
Okay.
Doesn't make any difference whether it's racism or black people mistreating other black people, because it's all about getting rid of mistreatment.
Okay. Okay. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. You may call in with your questions by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and we will vet it and read it. Let's go to the phone lines, and line number one. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Fuller and Mr. Bobby. I have a statement to thank Mr. Fuller, and then I have a question. The personal thanking Mr. Fuller is I'm a manager at my job, and I resolve problems by asking questions and getting answers. So I really want to thank you for that. My question is, with black men and black women, how I heard you say before, if a person just focuses on economics, that everything else will fall into place. But I wonder if you could put some more flesh on it. How can black men and black women work to get a better romantic relationships with each other?
By in the new expanded edition of the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code, I have under sex, the 8th area of activity, a list of questions. Now, it depends on what the circumstances are. It depends on if you're talking about an intimate relationship, then it's a whole list of questions that both persons must ask and answer each other voluntarily. I mean, based on how comfortable they may view themselves with each other in asking and answering these questions. The premise being, like I say always about anything, and that is all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So it's the same on a job situation and what you might call a professional type setting or something intimate. It's a matter of, are you willing to answer these questions? You know, am I willing to answer these questions? Ask and answer all of the questions pertinent to whatever is supposed to be going on, with one thing in mind, getting clarity and focus toward guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Because in every setting, interaction between people, the ultimate goal is the thing called justice. That's what you're going to be aiming for. You always keep that in mind. Is anybody, if we do this and we do that and we do the other, is anybody going to be mistreated? That's a question. Because if somebody's going to get mistreated, that's a no-no. It means you can't do it.
Yes.
And the other part is anybody here, everybody here, going to get the constructive help that they need without exception? Nobody's supposed to be left out in getting constructive help.
Yes, sir.
That is needed.
Yes, sir.
Otherwise, you don't have justice.
Okay. Your second question, sir?
Well, that was it. But I'll ask this. If a person follows the code, will they become smarter than the white supremacists?
Okay, thank you for your question.
Eventually, they should become smarter than the white supremacists because they have to overcome white supremacy. And you have only proven that you are smarter than the white supremacists when the white supremacists are no longer white supremacists. That's the only proof that you have that you're smarter than the white supremacists. Because the only reason for being smart, really, is to solve problems. And all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers.
Mm-hmm.
And you ask enough questions and get enough answers to anything in the universe, then your problems are solved, and your product should be justice and correctness. Ultimately, I always say, and like I described in the code book, ultimately, everybody on this planet should be universal man, universal woman.
Yes.
Not black people, white people. I mean, that's artificial. Not racist man and racist woman, which is what we have now, dominating everything that has to do with non-white people, and all kinds of evil that goes with that.
Yes.
Eventually, we will want universal man and universal woman in tune with the best that is and most constructive activities that are in the universe.
Okay. You're listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, on TalkTameItRadio.com. This is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. Mr. Fuller is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code, and you can get the revised, expanded version by going to ProduceJustice.com. That is ProduceJustice.com, and what will come up on the screen is all the information that you need to obtain the book. We start out the discussion speaking about sin and hypocrisy. That is the subject, but you can go off topic. Mr. Fuller has and is addressing this throughout the entire 2 hours. So let's go to phone line number 2, and you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your question?
Greetings. Good morning. I'm so honored to be able to speak to you, Mr. Fuller, and I'm grateful for your work. I wish I had actually had your book a few years ago. Now that I have your book and your work out, I'm trying to actually apply as much as possible. I'm running into a lot of issues as far as with producing justice in areas of my life. I have experienced having my rights stripped away as a parent, just due to trying to restore my culture, my African culture. And here recently, I experienced, for having a traffic violation, I was told to get my license, and they gave me a number of different things to do. And I was faced with financial hardships in between time. Well, the judge ordered for me to, he hit me with harsh fines, adding on top of the fines that were already present. And I guess my main question is, how can you produce justice when there is no justice?
Okay.
They continue to exercise racism, white supremacy against all non-white people.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Well, if I understand the question, how do you get justice when there is no justice? That's the whole point of everything that we're doing. Everything that I've written is to produce something that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as justice anywhere on the planet. You can't have white supremacy and justice on the same planet at the same time. That's impossible. There's no such thing as the existence of justice. It doesn't exist anywhere. There's no such thing as people on this planet not being mistreated. You don't find that anywhere among any people. Somebody's being mistreated all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And people who need help the most, the constructive help that they need, are they getting it? The answer is no. So you don't have justice anywhere on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot get it as long as you have the system of white supremacy for a very logical reason. The system of white supremacy is designed to maintain non-justice, maintain injustice,
mm-hmm.
to maintain the mistreatment of people.
Yes.
That's what it's designed to do. So you have to get rid of that in order to pave the way for having justice.
Okay. In her specific situation, I believe, if I understand her correctly, she understands what you just said, but I think what she's asking, in her specific situation, what can she do? She's facing financial hardships. Every door seems to be blocked. What can she do in this system of racism, white supremacy, facing what she is facing?
The three things in the law of compensation. Ask for what should be given.
Okay.
That's all she can do. She's a prisoner of war.
Okay.
So she asks the white supremacists, either directly or indirectly, because they're the ones who govern everything about her entire existence. She's not like a person that's out there in the world to herself.
Right.
She has people who are telling her what she can do and what she can't do.
Okay.
She's born into a system of racism. She's born in prison. So she has to ask the masters of the prison for everything that she needs.
That's number one.
Yes. And she accepts whatever they give her. That's the best she can do.
That's number two.
And then she compensates for the difference.
Okay.
And she can compensate for the difference most of the time simply by asking again,
okay.
which means once you ask twice, you are now begging. But that's all you can do when you're a prisoner of war anyway.
Okay.
A lot of people say, well, you don't beg. I mean, never beg anybody for anything. Ask them. Stand on your own 2 feet. I mean, never be caught in a position of begging. Well, I'll tell you what. If you're on this planet and you're a person of color, begging is something that you got to do because you are already a prisoner of war. You were born in prison. And so begging is what? It's asking more than once. That's what begging is. So you ask as many times as it is necessary for whatever it is that you need, and make sure that everything that you're asking for is going to have a constructive value.
All righty.
All right.
All righty. All right. Thank you, ma'am, for your question. Sorry about cutting you off there, but thank you for your question. I hope Mr. Fuller addressed it. Okay, let's go to the Gmail here. This comes from Andrew, Mr. Fuller. He says this: what is meant by the term marathon sex? I have heard you use this term in the past, and am not able to find it in the word guide you have written. Can you help me? Signed, Andrew, a victim.
Well, marathon sex means basically anything more than twice a week. And that's the way I would say it. Anything more than twice a week. Now, while you're having sex, you have it. I mean, but you make the most of it. I mean, but no more than twice every 7 days. I mean, so you're thorough, I mean, to your satisfaction, to the satisfaction of your partner. I mean, in that one time, and then when it comes to the second time, within the 7-day period, then that's it. Now, the rest of the time, you're supposed to be doing other things of constructive value. Now, these are suggestions. Now, you can engage in marathon sex, meaning you just every day, every night, all night. But this is not the recommendation according to compensatory counter-racist logic. Why? Not on account of the sex itself, but on account of a logical reason. It takes up a lot of time. That's what a marathon is. It's time-consuming, and it's energy-consuming. So when you're using your time and energy in a sexual fashion, you don't have time and energy for much else. And the next thing you know, this starts affecting everything else in all the other areas of activity: economics, education, labor, law, politics, religion. You're not taking care of other things, particularly in the first area of activity, economics, which is all about time and energy. That's not the best use of time and energy. Marathon sex, unlimited sex. It's going from one bed to the next, one person to the next, and just sex. Sure, you have a lot of energy for it probably, but you try to channel that energy into something that's going to have a more constructive effect. Because chances are marathon sex is not going to end in anything of constructive value. It's about mostly not about sex itself, but about the use of time and energy.
In the system of racism,
white supremacy. If you're just laying up in bed all the time, doing nothing but having sex, you're not going to be thinking about or doing much of anything else. Because that's your central focus. Sex is a very powerful motivating force. But you should be able to discipline what you're doing in that quarter. Otherwise, it leads to things that are very non-constructive and things that you're down the line not going to be very satisfied with yourself.
All righty. Well, that comes to the close of the first hour of all right, welcome to the second hour of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. And again, you are in touch with the Compensatory Concept. And I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. We are speaking with Mr. Neely Fuller, the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code. And he has a revised, expanded edition out, and it is wonderful. And you can get that by going to producejustice.com. That is producejustice.com, and what will come up on the screen is all the information that you can obtain to get the book. And also, you can get the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. You can get a compensatory counter-racist codified word guide. As a matter of fact, we have been in that word guide even today. Mr. Fuller read from that and explained a few things, but it's also better if you have it in your hand so that you can read it and get the information that you will need in your fight for justice. We've been talking about, Mr. Fuller has been talking about sin and hypocrisy, and we invite your questions, and you can do that by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and we will get you on. And speaking about that, let's take a phone call right now. Caller, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Good morning. I would like to start off about the book. I actually have the previous version, and I actually purchased 2 of the expanded versions and sent one to a friend of mine in Texas. I will actually, my critique on the expanded book, I actually like the layout for the organization of the first book, but I'm going to go through both and do a comparison for myself. But the question is, we are in this quote unquote, we are prisoners of war, we're prisoners in this white supremacist system and whatnot. Now, my question is, why do white people who actually benefit from this system get intimidated when non-whites or actual prisoners of war get educated within their system?
Mr. Fuller?
Oh, it depends on how the education is used. Now, the white supremacists do not mind black people being, quote, unquote, educated as long as they are not trying to educate their way out of that system, or they become a threat to the system. They don't mind you learning how to read and write and all like that, or drive a bus or whatever, or even work in a chemical laboratory at a very quote-unquote high level, as long as it's serving the system of white supremacy. But now, when you start saying that you want to do away with the system and replace it with a system of justice, then that's when they don't want you to use your quote-unquote education. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, you know, otherwise they wouldn't allow you to learn anything. But like in the movie, the TV series Roots, they didn't mind Fiddler learning how to play the fiddle because that's entertaining for them. I mean, so have Fiddler come up from the slave shack to the big house, and we're going to have some ceremonies up here entertaining our plantation owner friends from the next plantation. They're coming over. We're having a ball tonight. So have Fiddler come up and play the fiddle, you know, or have Billy Sweetly come up and recite poetry, you know, if it's going to entertain us as slave masters, as white supremacists. I mean, we don't mind our slaves being educated as long as their education is used to sustain the system. But now, if they're going to use it in any way to do away with the system and replace it with another system, presumably the system of justice, then we will be opposed to that as slave masters, as white supremacists. We are opposed to anything that our victims learn that's going to point them toward trying to actually produce justice.
Yes. Okay. Did you have another question, caller, before we go?
No, you pretty much answered it. I kind of felt that way, but I just wanted some clarification.
Okay. Thank you very much for your
Thank
call.
you.
Appreciate your listenership. Okay. Mr. Fuller, let's go to the Gmails. This comes from Brother Rashad. Rashad, he says this. Mr. Fuller, could you please answer the following question? 160 years after the notorious Supreme Court decision in the Dred Scott case, do blacks have any rights by which whites are bound to respect? Are blacks only under a delusion that they are U.S. citizens, as the Dred Scott decision was never overturned by the Supreme Court of the United States?
Well, in the first place, the system of white supremacy is worldwide. So anything that happens in the system of white supremacy is still happening in the system of white supremacy. It's a world system. it is the only real government on the entire planet. That government has never dissolved. There isn't any other government worthy of being called government other than, in capital letters, the system of white supremacy. So therefore, any decisions that are made by some court anywhere, the Dred Scott decision or whatever, decisions are made in the Congo or whatever decisions are made in a submarine at the bottom of the ocean. I mean, it's all within the system of white supremacy. The system of white supremacy is intact. It's never been abolished. The mistreatment of people based on color has never stopped. That's the thing to focus on. You don't have to get into the little details and the dots and dashes. It's all right to study these things, and should be. These things should be studied, like the Dred Scott decision. But always think about it within the context of the entire system of white supremacy.
Yes.
Which is worldwide, 24/7, applies to everybody, 24 hours a day, every day, right this minute, in 2016, in every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And if you're a person with color in his or her skin and classified as non-white, you are in the system of white supremacy and dominated by the people who believe in mistreating people,
yes,
and dominating them on the basis of color.
All righty. Let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Yes. Hi, Mr. Fuller, and hi, host. I was calling to ask, how do you believe that religion affects Black people particularly? How do you believe that it affects us and where we are in the system and our progression?
Mr. Fuller?
Well, it depends on what the white supremacists want non-white people, their victims, their plantation victims, to do. And that is serve the system of white supremacy. And it doesn't make any difference what religion a black person has. A black person can call themselves by any religious title. The white supremacists themselves say that you have religious freedom. You can name your religion anything that you want. You can have religious ceremonies. I'll help you set up whatever little buildings and whatnot you might want. I mean, within whatever religion you choose to have. I'll let you do that, as long as what? It doesn't interfere with the system of white supremacy. In other words, you can pray to whomever you want to pray to, but you will do what I say do, and when I say do it.
Yes, sir.
And make no mistake about that, dark person, that you will obey me. And you can pray to whomever you want to. You can clap your hands. You can jump up and down. You can sing. But when I show up, you will do what I say do. And it doesn't make any difference what it is. And you will do it most of the time with a smile on your face, or you'll have to answer to me. Now, after you're dead or something like that, then you can answer to whatever God you want to. But you will do what I say do as long as you're on this planet. And if you got a religion that interferes with my business of dominating you, you are going to hear from me, and you will find out what your God is on this earth.
Wow.
And you already know that, most of you all, so you don't even test me on it. You never disagree with anything that I say.
All righty.
Otherwise, you won't have a church or a mosque or anything else.
All righty. Was that all? Was that all, ma'am?
Yes, I had something else to say, but I forgot already. But thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiger. All righty. All righty. Let's see here. Before we go to the phone line, let's do this. Talktainment Radio is a 24/7, no charge, worldwide broadcasting facility that have hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, health, wellness, religion, and, of course, politics. Now, here's one that I would like to share with you, and it is simply called Hot R&B Music of Yesterday and Today. Now, that broadcast on Saturdays exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. If you are into R&B, and it says hot R&B, then you want to tune into this show. It's called Super Cool. Super Cool. Hot R&B music of yesterday and today, broadcast on Saturdays exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. You are in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. If you'd like to call in, you can do so by calling in at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Let's go to the phone lines. And we are going to go to line number 2. What is your question for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.?
Hi, Mr. Fuller. Morning to you. I don't say good, but morning to you. As a black female, many of us have fallen prey to the belief that we are going to beat the odds or win the lottery and find the black man who's going to rise up and even marry us, be with us, defend us, and protect us. I've read your work, I follow it, and I've talked to you for many years. One question I have first is, what do you tell black females worldwide on their stance under this global system of white supremacy and what their I know we shouldn't have expectations, but what is the best course of action they should take in regards to either having a relationship, pretending they'll be married? What is your opinion on that, please?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes. The black female, under the system of white supremacy, has no protection at all from the black male.
Okay.
Don't even think about looking forward to that.
Okay.
That doesn't exist. He's nothing but a fellow prisoner. And actually, in many regards, he's in a weaker position than the black female, because the white supremacists come down on him real hard when he starts acting like he's going to be a man. Being a black man in the system of white supremacy is absolutely impossible. It can't be done. No matter what a black male does, he's never, ever going to be a man in the system of white supremacy. In the system of white supremacy, there's only one man, and he's white. He will be a boy. Neely Fuller Jr. is a boy in the system of white supremacy. Boys are dependent on men. Boys are dependent on men and women. So, non-white people, black people, are subject to the system of white supremacy, and as prisoners of war, they have to answer to the prison masters. The prison masters are the only men and women. Black females have to get that notion out of their head that the black male can help them in any way that's massively serious, unless the white supremacists, racist man and racist woman, make a decision that that black male can get something from them that he can pass on to what he considers to be his woman, which is not true. Black males don't have any authority over anything under the system of white supremacy, but they are allowed to pretend that they have it. But anytime they cross the white supremacists, they find out with shock that they are not men. They're just boys. I don't care what kind of position they're supposed to have, what kind of title they're supposed to have. The truth is, and I can say this as a black male, the truth is we are prisoners of war, and we are prisoners of the system of white supremacy under racist man and racist woman. And they let us know that whenever we step out of line and start thinking that we are the head of some kind of household. A black female is on her own.
Thank you.
And I want to put this in there, too. If you have an offspring, don't expect any help from anybody. I want to say that to every black female on the planet. If you produce a child, do not, under any circumstance, expect any help, particularly from any other non-white person on this planet. All of your help comes directly or indirectly from the white supremacists. And you have to understand that. And if they are not willing to give it to you, either directly or indirectly, you are not going to get it. And so when you produce an offspring, keep that in mind. The one person that definitely isn't going to be able to help you, most likely, in the Northwestern Hemisphere, is a black male.
All righty. Okay. All right.
I can attest to that. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, because I needed you to say that, because I have been a victim particularly of that, and I felt that if you could at least emphasize that point, other black females out here won't fall prey to what I fell prey, that I'm going to beat the odds and things are going to be okay. And I think what you said was quite helpful. I remember when you said it at Estewan bookstores the first time.
Okay.
I heard you, and I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you so much for your call.
Okay.
All righty. Let's go to the phone line again. And line number 1, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your question, please?
Yes, good. How are you this morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Fuller and both Mr. Bobby. Look, if the whites, Trump and most of the whites, okay, who is it that the whites are afraid of? The black people, all people of color? I mean, look, they should have sealed off the Mexican border after the Alamo, so I don't understand that. And all Hispanics from Central America cross the border every day. What would be the problem with blacks if the Hispanics are going to overrun the country? What they say, by 2050 or something like that? You know, give me your opinion on that. What is the problem with? What do you see with that, Mr. Fuller, as far as the Hispanic population? What's Trump talk about with the borders? Who are they more afraid of? The African American, all black, the black diaspora, or the Hispanic?
Mr. Fuller?
Well, I'm hearing several words here. Afraid, meaning fear. I'm also hearing another word called border. Well, for one thing, the white supremacists do not fear people that they have already conquered. They are watchful, but that's it. I mean, just like you watch your flock, just like you watch your prisoners of war from your tower. I mean, you watch them to see that they don't break any of your rules. Now, I'd like to say this about borders. The white supremacists, there's no such thing as a border anywhere in the universe. Borders are for non-white people, and they are made by the white supremacists. White supremacists make borders, and they play games with borders. Yeah. They will say that, well, I don't want you coming across this border. If they don't want you coming across the border, you're not coming. That's just it. The white supremacists are the ones who make borders, but they don't have borders for themselves. They go where they please. Non-white people go where they are sent. I'm going to say that again. White supremacists go where they please, wherever they want to go. They don't care nothing about anybody's so-called border. That's laughable. You don't have a border if you got color in your skin.
Yeah. Well, what would be the plan?
And they determine whether anybody of color is going to go across any other border. So when you see people anywhere on this planet and they have color in his or her skin, it's because the white supremacists have said it's okay for you to be there, even though they will sometimes pretend that they don't know that you're there, or that you got there and they don't know what to do about it. Oh, you better believe if you got color in your skin, they are the ones who allowed you to be there.
Okay.
And they can have you leave anytime they get ready.
Well,
they are
how are they
playing
having
games.
a hard time
These are little
with deporting?
mind games
Oh, go
that
ahead.
they play.
Yeah. Okay, now are they having a hard time deporting some like 10 million here that are illegal? Well, what is the plan? To build a wall or gunpowder? I mean, what is the if they're so afraid of Mexicans crossing the border? Well, what's their plan, Mr. Fuller? Then I'd like to listen before you hang up.
I'm going to say it again. They don't have any fear at all.
Okay.
Anytime you see non-white people coming across a so-called border, the white supremacists sent for them. They're playing games. They're playing little mind games. I mean, they are laughing at people's simplistic way of looking at it. Like, these non-white people are migrants. They are coming in boats and whatnot, and they are crossing this border, and we don't know what to do about it. I mean, that's a trick. They are the ones who are sending for them. They know exactly what to do with them. They could blow them all up. They could kill them. They could poison them before they even got anywhere close to a border. I mean, they know what to do with the water and everything,
Yes,
where they
sir.
are.
Yes, sir.
They know where everybody is on this planet. They have mapped every inch of this planet that's worth mapping.
Mm-hmm.
They know where all people are. They also predict where all people are going to go for the next 50 years. They know where people are going to have to go. They'll say, we got 10 million people in this particular place. But you know what? So all 10 million of them are going to be coming to me 50 years from now because I'm going to dry up that water where they are. I'm building dams all over the place, and what they are depending on is their so-called civilization. Depending on water, it's not going to be any water there.
Yeah.
So they're going to come where the water is, and the water is going to be behind the dam that I'm building.
Okay.
But it's going to take them 50 years to figure out what I'm doing because they are all dumber than I am.
Yes.
I'm a white supremacist, and that means that I am God.
Caller, before I let you go, are you having problems hearing us? Because you asked to stay online. Can you hear us offline, or has that been rectified?
Well, you're not streaming. No, that's the problem. I'm at Talktainment, and you're not streaming.
Okay. The technician said that you are to refresh your browser, and that will get you should get you on the screen. Why don't you go ahead and try that and see if that works for you? He was in here last week, and he said that was one of the problems, but we have increased that. Okay. Well, thank you for your info.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. Let's go to line number 2. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Hi, good morning. I want to ask Mr. Fuller as far as the current climate that we're in. I know we're in the system of white supremacy. But I want to know what stage are we in? Are we in the refinement, expansion, with so much going on as far as with the race soldiers against the blacks and with Trump, Hillary Clinton,
Okay.
and different things? What stage are we currently in?
All right. Mr. Fuller?
Basically, they are still in the refinement stage. The refinement stage means you still use deceit rather than direct violence. The white supremacists are not using direct violence on a massive scale. They are using deception.
Yes.
And so that's the main thing that they depend on. So they are still in the refinement stage. Now, they themselves will chastise members of their own group. They get a little out of hand and start using direct violence when it hasn't been authorized by the massive number of white supremacists. Every now and then, some white people just say, well, I disagree with other white supremacists on how they are handling these black people, and so I'm going to take some direct action toward them. I'm going to go out and kill some of them, physically. And the white supremacists will go along with a little of it up to a point. But then when they say it's bad for business, just like in any criminal organization, they say, hey, you're attracting too much attention with this violence, directly. where they can detect that it's violence that's direct against these non-white people. You're gunning them down. We got other ways that we want to get rid of them. I mean, we get rid of them through Zika, Ebola. We got all kind of diseases. I mean, we can wipe out 10,000 people in no time, in just a few minutes, if we want to. And so you're attracting too much attention with this gunfire. So stop it. We'll allow a little of it, to let most of them or some of them understand that they can't get too far out of line here and there and all like that. But that's not the way we want to conduct our business for the long range. Like Sollozzo in The Godfather.
Yeah.
One of the characters. He said,
Yes.
he said, Tom, hey, violence is a big expense. I don't like bloodshed like that. Said, it's bad for business. It attracts too much attention.
Okay. Let's go quickly to the phone lines. Line number 2, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Yes, what do they plan to do if China invades America and about the trillions of dollars that we owe China?
Mr. Fuller?
What's the question now?
Go ahead. Could you repeat that, ma'am?
Yes, what does the supremacists plan to do if China invades America, and what are they going to do about the trillions of dollars that we owe China?
Here again, people have asked me about China. Well, the Chinese, the last I heard, are classified as non-white. They're classified as brown and or yellow people, or broadly speaking, quote unquote, non-white. So whatever it is that the Chinese may decide to do, the white supremacists already know this. The people who believe in white supremacists know just how far they're going to let non-white people go. I don't care how many of them it is, or what they're going to do. And the way they usually, in their sophisticated, refined manner, they won't do anything like use arms, just like they don't use arms, for the most part, everywhere in the world. I mean, on a daily basis. Otherwise, there'd be no non-white people left on the planet if they just decide to use arms, and kill people in mass. So what do? They do it through the manipulation under the first area of activity, economics. Or they make cultural shifts.
So they're orchestrating it then?
They orchestrate it. In other words, they orchestrate the use of people's time and energy.
I got you.
And they can push a button on a computer and sometimes cause people to panic about what the economy is going to be like.
Because they're running the whole show.
Yes. In other words, they are the masters of computers and all like that. They make sure before they give anybody else a computer that they have mastered the computer.
I got
you. And they know what that computer can do and what it won't do.
Okay.
And they can mess with people's economics.
Okay.
Just by pushing a button on a console.
All righty. Thank you, caller. That was an excellent question. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. You can check us out on WCRS-FM 98.3 Wednesday and Sunday evenings. Blogs and podcasts are available. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. Stay right there. More of your questions and some more Gmails. Good questions today, callers. Alrighty, TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. You can download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is the compensatory concept on TalkTainmentRadio.com, heard exclusively here. I'm Mr. Bobby, the co-host, and we're speaking with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code, and you can get the revised, expanded edition by going to producejustice.com. That is producejustice.com. And when you go there, and I strongly recommend this, you get the compensatory counter-racist codified word guide. Mr. Fuller spoke out of that earlier in the, well, not this hour, but in the first hour. We are speaking on subject which is sin and hypocrisy, which, as a matter of fact, we've been actually blended through just about all of our calls. You can go back in the podcast and pick up that, or even if you have a question about that, you can do so by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Let me get out the way and go to the phone lines. Which line, Ed? Line number 1. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Hi, my name is Jada. I'm calling to get his opinion on my position that I'm taking.
Okay.
Because of the racist city that I'm in. The position that I'm in is I've put nigger all over my car, proper letters, and when I leave out my home, I put nigger on my face. I'm doing that because I've been treated with no right, just totally unfair by city officials. The chief of police told me when I came to this town, it's open carry, but you're going to have a problem.
Wait a minute, excuse me. Did you say that you put nigger on your
Yes,
car
sir.
and on your
Yes,
face?
sir. Yes, sir.
And then he said that you're going to have a problem?
Yeah, but I did the nigger thing on this past 4th of July.
Yes.
When I came to town, it was August of 2014.
Okay.
When I got my gun ordered, I went to the police department and I asked, well, I hear it's open carry in the town. What is it? Can I get some paperwork, a brochure? Oh, it's open carry, but you're going to have a problem. So when the white boy went in the church and shot up some 9 people in that South Carolina, wherever that North Carolina, I went back to ask, can I get a brochure? You know, this is what the Chief Terry Clark told me. Well, we don't have no paperwork. You got to go to the sheriff's office. And I got a bad back. I rolled my bike down to the sheriff's office. They did give me a printout. But nevertheless, this bastard is still on the force. And just to give you a little bit more about the racism, when I signed my lease in this housing authority, the Mexican called me a little shit while she was at the copier. The next month she told me this is the white people neighborhood. The next month she told me this, go back to Ferguson. The next month she stopped you and I from introducing ourselves, and you white told you to call me by my first name. Okay, the police, Don Whittle, told me, well, she has a boss. Get her boss's number and ask her to talk to the boss about my medical situation. She flat out refused to give me her boss's number.
Okay.
So this past July, after taking all this, well, this past November, the vice president, Lorraine Green, told me, well, stand on your head. See if you stand on your head sign for your food. 80-year-old white lady. This is after I went to her with all this about the executive vice president, the executive director, Billie Jean Valdez.
Oh, okay. So what is your question for Mr. Fuller then?
I want to know what's his opinion on my position that I'm taking. What type of results? I've already got the KKK on the card, the 2 letters of the KKK. Nobody is giving me any information about who did it, and they locked them up. So I want to know, what can I expect? How far do you think I'll get with my position?
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
What is her question? What can she do about
what? What can she expect, from all that stuff that she's been receiving and so forth?
Well, I didn't get the gist
with
of
nigger
what...
on everything, and I want to know, can I expect, what can I expect these white folks to do? They looking at it, they showing that they racist. They got a comment. It ain't nothing to me. They just publicly, pointing to the car. They mad about it. If they could make this car disappear, I'm sure they would. So, this executive director sent this chief to my house after on like the 7th of July. After I told the first set officers, don't come to my house without an invitation or appointment. The chief shows up, the one that told me, oh, it's open carry, but you're going to stop. So he refused to tell me his name, walked off. Wouldn't tell me why he's knocking on my door. He's using the cops to threaten, harass, terrorize, and intimidate.
Okay, let's see if we can get Mr. Fuller to address that. Did you kind of get the gist of what she was saying, Mr. Fuller?
I'm trying to get the
what can I expect?
epicenter
I got
of
this
what
on everything. What can I expect?
I want to know what the actual problem is.
I have no... I'm black. They're harassing me. They're terrorizing me. Every time I call my house, you can't go to the bank without banking, getting 3-4 withdrawals, and then 8 cops coming up on me.
Wait a minute. Let's take one thing at a time. You are in a house, and what is happening?
I'm in an apartment complex.
You're in an apartment complex, and the problem is
the town people are racist. They lying on me. They calling the cops, lying on me. Every time I walk out, when I go to the Walmart, they walking up on me like we come together.
Mr. Fuller, she said that she has written nigger on her car and nigger on her face. This is what she said. She's done this. So she's asking what can she expect out of a racist town, racist sheriff, racist everybody there.
The mayor, let me tell you what the mayor did. Now,
wait a minute. Let Mr. Fuller go ahead and address
See, problem solving is about taking one question at a time, and you always start with a question: is what is the problem specifically that you're addressing? Now, evidently, she has reacted by putting this word, the N word, on her car to something that's already happening. Now, so it comes down to what is she expecting to be the reaction by using words? Words are nothing but tools. So what does she expect the reaction to be? What type of benefits is she supposed to receive by putting the word nigger on her face and on her car? What benefits does she expect to get from having done this? See, words are nothing but tools. Doesn't make any difference what word it is. But anytime you use a word, Acme painting company or whatever, these are words on the sign of a vehicle. I mean, you're sending a message. Right. Now, what is that message supposed to do for you? Every move that you make is supposed to work for you. Now, the question now is, by putting that word on your car, are you getting what you asked for? Or what you are trying to get from the people who have the things that you're trying to get?
Well, I got U.S. Marshal help on there, too.
Okay.
So the U.S. Marshal hasn't come. The state trooper, Hernandez, hasn't come. They sent my request up the chain of command, so I don't know who's getting it and when they're going to come to take my report.
Okay, so Mr. Fuller, what you're saying is she should ask herself, what does she want? What does she expect to get from the use of those words?
From the action. Everything in compensatory logic is about what do you expect to get from the actions that you are taking.
Okay.
Help. I expect help. I want these people to change. I want them to see that it's a problem. You got a black person walking around with nigger, feeling like a nigger. Y'all done something wrong. I want them to change. I can't force them to change. I can't make them change. Can't ask them to change. I want them to see it's a problem, and I want help.
Okay. All righty. Well, Mr. Fuller, you heard it, and you did address it. So we'll, like I said, you addressed it. Okay. Thank you very much, man, for your call. We have to move on here. Thank you very much. What's the phone line? Line number 2. Okay. Line number 2. You are on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
I don't have a question, brother, but I want to make a comment. I want to thank you and Mr. Fuller for allowing me to do that. First, I want to share with you and Mr. Fuller and all decent human beings. Here in Chicago, there's a Caucasian woman. She's walking through the heart of the black community with a big sign that says, I am sorry. Talk show host saw her. He brought her to the show. They only talked to her for 15 minutes, and she was apologizing for what these psychopaths are doing to us and for what they have done to dark people throughout their history. And that's where our sorry leadership is pitiful. There are so many decent Caucasian people who are tired of these psychopaths. But if you don't have the leadership to pull them to you and to support your cause, then they would just lay back. That's why a lot of Caucasians went down south with the civil rights movement. They saw leadership that they believed in, and they saw that this was wrong, what these psychopaths are doing. We don't have that today. Now, I'm going to close with this.
Okay.
Someone said, when someone show you who they are, believe them. The psychopath has showed us who they are. Believe them. Now, for those who do not want to hear about genocide or extermination, turn your volume down, because this is the final objective. Now, human beings have been exterminated for thousands of years. It's nothing new. It is black people's turn here in America to be exterminated.
10 seconds now.
When I tell you to get out, I know white supremacists run the world. Mr. Fuller is right on that. When I say if you can get out, you are going to try to escape immediate danger.
Okay.
Immediate danger.
All
Not
right.
that you're going to get away from white supremacy.
All
like
right.
I told you when I was in Vietnam, hey, Obama ain't been too long left Vietnam. They killed 2 million of them people. Vietnam still had to come and talk to them.
All right,
They
bro.
run the world. Okay, brother. I'll get you next
Appreciate
time.
your call. All
Thank
right.
you.
That would be under VGQ, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, it would.
Okay, VGQ. And for those who don't understand that, it's in the book. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. You can call in by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and we will try to get it on. Let's go to line number 3. What is your call for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.?
Mr. Fuller, is abortion and prostitution considered incorrect or a sin under the system of white supremacy? And I'll get off to let him answer.
Yes, abortion is incorrect and prostitution is incorrect. But we are all prostitutes, and in many instances, females are compelled or makes the choice of having abortions. It's very little that the victims of racism in the system of racism can do that is correct. The system does not allow their victims to do very many things that are correct, but you do the best that you can. If you can avoid having an abortion and be able to do something to help a child that you're having and whatnot and nourish it and whatnot, then you do that if you can, if the white supremacists allow you to. But you do that at great risk. A black female having a baby does that, in particular in the northwestern hemisphere and in other parts of the world. Having a baby, you are risking a whole lot because it takes a whole lot of nourishing for just taking care of one baby.
Yes, sir.
And it's going to get worse.
Yes, sir.
So thinking that you're going to get some help from somebody, that somebody cares about that baby other than you, if you don't care about the baby, that baby is in big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody else is going to really give you a whole lot of help because they don't care about you or that baby.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Thank you for your call, caller. Let's go to the Gmail. This is from Eric. He says this, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, is it possible that those that created the system of white supremacy as an initial concept are not what we call humans? Could these, quote, creators, end of quote, be aliens, beings from another planet, robots with their own artificial intelligence? Would your understanding of the system of white supremacy still hold strong if this were the case?
I don't know if that's the case or not. I mean, where did people come from, period? That would be the basic question, compensatory logic. Why are people on this planet in the first place? Why is anything on this planet in the first place? Why is this planet not like the moon or like Jupiter or Venus or some of the other planets that they have recognized as not being populated? Why is this place called Earth? Why does it kind of stand out as a place where you have rivers and where you have trees and where you have seasons and where you have all types of organisms moving around? Everything from mosquitoes to something that we call people, and people of different heights and different shapes. Why are we here? That's sort of like an eternal question.
Yes, sir.
But according to compensatory logic, I say, well, since we are here in the form of something that we call people, what are people supposed to be doing? And I came to the conclusion, for practical purposes, people are supposed to be solving problems.
Solving problems. Okay.
Why? Because we have problems to solve.
Yes, sir.
And the biggest problem is the race problem right now.
All righty. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call. I think you can still get in, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. I have a question from Daryl. He says, peace, Dr. Fuller and Mr. Bobby. Did Gavin Young, the alleged shooter of the 6 officers in Baton Rouge, stand by his work? You say that if you commit a crime that you shouldn't run and hide, but stand by what you did by saying, yes, I did this, and here's why. I ask because before the media could try and link him to people like Dr. Boyce, Professor Griff, K-Flex, he even quoted some of your stuff, but he said flat out not to blame any group he was affiliated with or belonged to, because what he did was his work alone. Mr. Fuller?
Well, I don't know all the details of the incident that he's talking about. I mean, and everything that's been said about it and what the person may have written about what they were doing or anything like that. I just take it for what it is. But standing by your work, the term itself means any work that you do. Everybody should be known for what they do, they themselves do, and why they did it. And let that person do that explanation, whomever that person might be. That's whether you're fixing a flat on a car, or whether you're killing somebody, or whether you're climbing a mountain. If you're the person that's doing it, you can explain what you're doing and why you're doing it. And you should do that. And it shouldn't be any confusion. That's the main thing you don't want.
Yes, sir.
Among people anywhere on the planet, any time of day or night. The one thing you want to get rid of is confusion. That's why the stand by your work.
Yes, sir.
Slogan,
okay,
you might say, exists. That's why I'm trying to bring it into existence as the thing that you always look for. Everybody stand by what they did or said.
Okay.
And be able to explain why they did it and said it.
Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller number 1, you are on. What is your question for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.?
Yes. Hi, Mr. Fuller and host. Again, I have a question, Mr. Fuller. I was wondering, what is your insight or your thought as to how do we go, when I say we, I mean the people who want to recognize problems, want things to be better, things of that nature. How do you recommend we go about daily when we have to deal with people on the job? We have to deal with supremacists or racist people on the job. Every day we're interacting with different people. We can't escape the world per se. And we're dealing with family and friends who are still stuck and bound in certain religions and, just certain traditions. And everything is just the same. It's like a cycle. So how do you recommend that we go about daily dealing with so much of what's going on?
Codify everything. What do I mean by codifying everything? It means, first of all, you try to find out, because we're usually talking about problems, problem solving. Problems keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. So you look at each and every problem and say, okay, first of all, what is the problem? And then you say, now, what's the best procedure for solving the problem? And what have I been saying all along? According to counter-racist compensatory logic, all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So you ask that first question, what is the problem? Then you ask, what is the cause of the problem? And then you say, what's the best way to go about solving the problem? And you've got to solve the problem without making any. That's another thing. That's a part of the codification. You don't want to solve one problem and make 3 and 4 other problems in the process. So usually a problem that has to do with people has to do with some form of non-justice being practiced. So you say, okay, whatever this problem is, let's look at it. And let's see if anybody is being mistreated. That's number one. And number two, let's see if everybody is getting the constructive help that they need. That's the criteria. You just lock onto that, and everything else should fall in place. You say, first of all, is anybody here, anybody being mistreated? And if so, let's look at this mistreatment and see what's causing the mistreatment. Because nobody is supposed to be mistreated in any circumstance. And then number two, is anybody here who needs help? Now, usually, in answer to that question, everybody holds up their hand. Yeah, I need help. I need help all over the place. Everybody in the room stands up. I need all kinds of help. Then you slow everybody down and you say, okay, since everybody needs help, let's start with the person who needs the most help. Will the person that needs the most help step forward? And then you always start with the person that needs help the most and make sure that the help that they need is constructive. Now, some person might step forward and say, yeah, I need help. I need another shot of cocaine. Well, now, that's not constructive. You do need help. But the way that you are going about getting the help that you need is not solving a problem without making any. See, so your help, I mean, we'll have to pass you by on that and go to somebody else who needs help in a constructive manner.
Okay, so I wanted to make one more statement. I've been following, your logic, your work. So I thought about minimize contact, minimize conflict. And I just want to say that I found that to be very helpful in dealing with people in general and family, friends, wherever it's needed. And I just wanted to ask, do you think that's constructive as far as dealing with friends and family? Because they don't understand that. People outside of, that idea, they don't understand, well, why don't you come around? Why don't you, do this and why don't you do that? It's because it's not constructive. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to come around to gossip.
Okay.
I don't want to come around just to argue,
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to cut that because we hear the music. So hopefully you can call back next week and ask that very provocative question. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio, and that's radio the way it should be.